I have the distinct pleasure and honor of introducing a statesman who is recognized in South Africa, revered there, and also globally respected. When I say revered in South Africa, if you happen to walk on the streets with Mac or if you go out in a shopping mall, I would say that almost 7 times out of 10, I'm not exaggerating, people will wave out to him or just want to come and shake hands with him. This is 20 years after South Africa got independence. That shows the respect he enjoys. Mac was also the Minister of Transport. He's currently the spokesperson and one of the most important members in the cabinet as a trusted member. As the Minister of Transport, he was also selected as amongst the top 3 innovative ministers in the world at that time. I think Mac, that had to do a lot with Nazir Ali handling your roads program. I'd now like to quote what Nelson Mandela had to say. It's from an 18-page document that I've just picked up 18 lines. The quote goes as follows. Mac put the struggle of South Africa's freedom above everything in life. Mac willingly put his life on the line, not on many occasions, but on each occasion as it demanded. He did so without a thought to what might happen, but always with meticulous preparation. In pursuit of that cause, he became a legend for the torture he was subjected to. Several parts of his body were nailed during his detention. Mr. Mandela says further that there were several times that Mac walked out, several times, out of torture with bloodstains all over. The next morning, he went back to the torture room smiling. No human being could endure such repeated bouts of torture and come out alive. Madiba said further, he attempted to commit suicide on 2 occasions while he was in detention, not out of despair, but out of cold-blooded calculation. Dead men don't talk. With this brief introduction, Mac, I'd like you to share what you took out of this in your own life.
Good evening, friends. And first of all, bear with me that I'm nervous tonight. About 10 minutes ago, I went back to the hotel and I was about to enter the lift when Liu came out of the lift. And we went past and greeted each other, and then he turned around and he said, "You're on tonight, just now." And I said, "Yes, I was trying to escape tonight, but I was caught out." Deepak, let me start by first of all thanking you for having me here and congratulating you on the award that you received today. For me, it's a great thing to hear a friend being honored by the community in which he has been working. What did I take? Let me start by saying history has a terrible way of dealing with human beings. Those who emerge as heroes are usually the ones that get caught. And you get caught because you made mistakes. And then everybody says you're a hero. But all those who have served in the struggle who never got caught are not known. I think I have had a very privileged life. Privileged because I don't think there are many human beings who can say that they've had the opportunity to share the harshest times together with a band of colleagues, share all the pain and the agony, and learn from your mentors how to conduct yourself. I have reached a point where I do not believe that there is a gene in anybody that predicts that you will become a leader. I learned from my mentors in prison that life is full of opportunities, challenges, and choices that you have to make. But it is the consequences, and usually the unintended consequences, that decides whether you rise as a leader. And it depends on how you react to those consequences. I learned from Mandela, for example, that I went to prison as a hot-headed young man, determined to fight our way to freedom at all costs. He taught me that every time I lost my temper and got into an argument with the prison warders, I would start off on the right premise, but I would lose my temper and say the wrong thing. And for that, I would be charged and convicted for an offense in prison for speaking to a warder disrespectfully or using the wrong language. And he told me then, "You are right, Matt, about your arguments." Because I'll say to him, "You mean we must tolerate this nonsense?" And he said, no, don't tolerate it, stand up, fight. But when you speak, count 10, say the right things. He will never be able to charge you because you're taking the right course. I've reached a point now that I count 10, but I don't know whether I'm really angry or whether I'm pretending I'm angry. I also learned that from him, there is something about us as human beings. They can take everything away from you, your clothes, your physical possessions, but the one thing they cannot take from you is your dignity. The only time you can be robbed of your dignity is if you are complicit with those who are trying to rob you. So those are important lessons for me, Deepak. But I have also learned that leadership is not just what you say. We had agitated for permission to go and work outside the quadrangle, where all that we saw for years was just breaking stones in a quadrangle and just seeing a patch of blue sky. Only seeing a blade of grass once in 6 months when you went to see your visitor. We demanded and we went out to the lime quarry to work, and they made us walk to the quarry in rows of 4. We were surrounded by warders, all armed, and asking us to run. And the whisper went through the column of us to say that Mandela was whispering and saying to us, "Walk slowly." I said to myself, it's all bloody easy for him to tell me to walk slowly, but I don't want that baton landing on my head. But I looked around and I saw Mandela weave his way. He was in the middle of the column, and he slowly went to the front of the column. And by sheer action, he slowed down the pace. And the warders were screaming, threatening, doing everything. We had learned not to react, not to say a word. But what I saw was what makes a person a leader. That he placed himself in the front row, set the pace, and showed us the way to conduct ourselves. So I can talk more and more that way, Deepak, but for me, it's been a privilege to have served time with them, to have them as my mentors, and hopefully to have learned something from them.
Mac, may I move on to something else now? And request you to talk about that you all went through a transition when you were waging war for freedom. And then when it came to that crunch, you were then negotiating, and during that transition for democracy. That is something, there's a fair amount that's been written. I'd like you to share your views on that, because it was, at one stage there was war, next stage there was negotiation, and then came settlement. And what are the impressions that you can voice with us for sharing globally?
I think it is unavoidable in the development of human society that conflicts will arise and often they break out into war. But I think that all parties to a war, to a conflict, need to understand one thing, that at some point you will be forced to talk to each other across the lines of war. And the important thing is, therefore, never to close out that possibility. even if it is to accept or to offer your surrender to the other side at the end of the war. You still have to talk. And there I learned, and that's what made it possible when South Africa looked like there was no way out, that we would reduce the country to ashes rather than succumb to tyranny. That when that moment arrived, it was possible for our movement to adapt and accept the necessity for negotiations and to prepare for it. And in that preparation, again a lesson from Mandela, listen to the other side. Not because you have to agree to them, but listen to them to understand what really are their concerns, what are their fears. Because until you can concretize those issues, you cannot address the issue. In South Africa, we learned that that white minority that was governing our country for 3.5 centuries was now afraid that it would lose the privileges that it had erected for itself. And therefore we had to offer a bridge by which they could cross over from white minority rule to democracy. We had to offer temporary adjustments so that it would make it possible for them to move forward. Amongst those, we guaranteed the white minority in the civil service, the army and the security forces, 5 years of security, of job security and rank security. Secondly, we offered them a coalition government for 5 years. And again, I remember that when we concluded the negotiations in 1993 November, we went late that night to wake up Mandela and to report to him that we thought we had a package on the table. And he looked at us and he said, do we get majority rule based on one person, one vote? And he detected a certain hesitance in our voice when we said yes. He said, how long before we get that? So we then confidently said 5 years. And he said, maximum or minimum? And we said, maximum. He said, good, we've got a deal. We then said, President, can we brief you on the details of the agreement? He said, chaps, thank you very much. I trust you, you're my lieutenants. The deal's on, we've got a lot of work to do. We are heading for elections, we're going to have to win it. So let's get back to work. So I think that focus. Why do I put this emphasis? Because I think, Deepak, at the end of the day, war, while necessary at times to bring peace, brings out the worst in human beings. I say to myself, and I've had many years to reflect on it, that while I pursued a struggle for a human cause and a humane cause, I know that in the process of conducting that struggle, I lost some of my humanity. Because war brings out the worst in you. I think peace is the greatest prize for humanity. And I think that we have to steer a path where the model that we set up in South Africa, where at a particular conjuncture we were able to negotiate, serves as a beacon to say that there is no conflict that cannot be resolved. The important thing is to cross that line. When we were talking and Mandela began to discuss with the regime, he ended up confiding in the colleagues that he was imprisoned with at that particular prison, just 5 of them. And the one said, don't talk to the regime. The other said, why didn't you start talking to them earlier? But the wisest said, Horasis said, no, I think it is inevitable we have to talk, but I would like the other side to make the approach. And Mandela turned to him and he said, Walter, does it really matter who makes the approach? Isn't it that we want a negotiated solution? Isn't the solution the important thing?
In today's world, Mac, you also played a very important role in some of the peace processes globally. And you've been involved with quite a few of these countries in the Middle East. And would you like to share something on that?
I don't know whether it is lessons of mine, but I think it is more my peers and my mentors. We were involved in getting the Northern Irish parties to talk. They arrived in South Africa as guests of democratic South Africa, refusing to travel on the same plane. So the Unionists came in one flight and the Republicans came in another flight. When we took them to the place where we were going to get them to talk, they refused to sit in the same dining room. And being Irish, they refused to drink in the same pub, so we had to put up a separate pub for each of the groups. And eventually we called Mandela, and he arrived, and we said to him, President, we have a problem here. These two parties don't want to sit in the same room, so you have to speak to each one separately. And he said, it's no problem, I'll speak to them. And he addressed them, and each one separately, and he said to them, gentlemen, you have to realize one thing. You don't negotiate with friends, you negotiate with enemies. You will have to sit in the same room one day. Do it now rather than tomorrow. And touch wood, the Irish went back, the process began, and they're today in a joint government in Northern Ireland. I've been involved in Iraq. I have traveled through it as an unknown person. I've driven from Erbil to Kirkuk to Baghdad. And when they discovered that I was in Baghdad, they refused to allow me to drive back to Erbil to take a flight out. But I saw there also that intolerance can arise from any quarter. Do not assume that your side is always going to be right. We persuaded the parties at that time to sign an accord called the Helsinki Accord. And that was around about 2007-8. Where are they today? In a total chaotic situation where human life is of no value. But I learned an important message, Deepak, and that is, at all times, those who control power and those who are parties to the conflict always try to construct a table where every party in that society should have a seat at the table, even if they do not come to the table. Leave that seat open, keep on saying that there is a place for you at the table. And that's for me what says everything for democracy. I don't believe in it from the point of view of the mechanics and how many years before an election and all those details. I believe in it because democracy creates a playing field, it creates the rules of the game, and it allows parties with conflicts of interest, contradictions amongst themselves, to be able to engage with each other to resolve those conflicts, not in order to remove the conflict forever, but in order to allow society to move forward.
But Mac, for a stable world, and if you're going to have delays in decision making, like take for instance, India has a Maoist situation, and it's followed a particular process. So would you say that you should create a table and a space for them to come to the negotiating table? That is one. And how do you see democracy in a stable world?
The United States took up a position in Afghanistan where, having characterized a set of forces, I think correctly, as terrorists, they made it impossible for talks. And later on they had to send an ambassador to try and open those links. What I'm saying is that let the parties who behave in the wrong way themselves leave the table, let them refuse to take the seat. Because at all times you have to uphold the morality of the cause that you're standing for. So that's all I'm saying. Should any party and every party be at the table, I think that there should be space for all. Because I think that often it is not just the ordinary people who are wrong. Their passions are inflamed by politicians and demagogues. And when passions are inflamed, we do all sorts of things that we would regret. Let's not allow that situation to arise. Let's always hold the high moral ground. So that's all I'm saying. I have no answers as to how we should solve our problems. But I have one sense that when I said leadership is about challenges, choices, consequences, and how you react to those consequences. What I have learned and the precept by which I have begun to live is that you take, if you're a leader, you take the consequences, you turn it into a challenge, you make it into an opportunity, and you show a way forward. Now, I think that democracy is about that. It creates the space for everybody to re-look at matters as opportunities rather than setbacks only. So in that sense, I share with all of you what I've heard over the last few days, the optimism that today is there amongst you folks from India. I share that, but I share it from a perspective that I think you would not be successful businessmen, and I've listened to you all with awe over the last day, is that you have been successful because you took everything and you turned it into an opportunity. I think Subodh was talking about the global enterprise, and he said it was the globe, but you saw the opportunity. You made it an opportunity, you made it a challenge. That for me is the greatest lesson in everything. It's all I can share, but I feel sorry for my generation. It was easy for us. The choices were between bad and good. I had to either submit to apartheid and live forever under humiliation, or stand up and fight and then suffer and get to prison. But today's world is so different. We're living in a world where the relationships are not just binary. There are many, many relationships. The choices are not just between good and bad. The young generation have to choose between good and good and good. It's terribly confusing. It's like when I came out of prison and went into a grocery shop to buy cheese. I'd gone there knowing only 6 types of cheese. I came out of prison to go into a shop and find there are 250 kinds of cheeses. How do I stand and taste each one to make my decision? This is the world in which the young are living. This is the age in which information is instant. This is the way when something happening in a village in China is known to people in London. But with that overload of information, we're living in a world where we need to realize that knowledge is based on the past. The decisions we make are about the future. And the only bridge we have in this information overload is the wisdom to select from that information what is relevant and what is not.
I'm going to throw it open for the audience to ask you a few questions.
Why do you sound apologetic?
No, not at all. Before that, I haven't finished. From all this, South Africa is going through a transition because of the high rate of unemployment. It's also suffering because of inflation. How do you see South Africa, and how do you see a democracy there after 20 years? Because you've been one of the founding fathers. You've laid the foundation with Madiba and others. And do you see that getting hurt? And do you see that surviving?
Deepak, I think South Africa in the last 20 years of democracy has achieved more than any other post-colonial country in the first 20 years of independence. Not because we are special, but because we had lessons to learn from others how not to do things. So we've done a lot. But I think that what I heard today, was it Madam Suri who said, the biggest monster today is the unemployment of the youth. I think poverty, unemployment, and inequality. Yes, Rahul, you mentioned it. I think these remain the biggest challenges, and they are there in South Africa in a rampant way. There is no country that has found the answer to these problems. But I think that the world in which we are living is capable of uniting us across countries with that challenge. South Africa, in addition to those problems, many countries have it, but South Africa has it, corruption. We have to commit ourselves and build the same unity that we built in the struggle against apartheid. We have to build the same unity now in democratic South Africa to commit all people, in spite of their political differences, to fight poverty, to fight unemployment, and to fight inequality. I believe that in 20 years' time, the world will be a better place, because we live in a world where today its productive capacity, in the midst of the poverty and unemployment and inequality, is able to produce enough to feed all of us, to educate all of us, and to give all our children the opportunity in life to become something more than we are today. So I think South Africa will be sitting at that frontier, but I think it will only achieve that by uniting with other countries who share that objective. And I think the starting point of that is where the poverty is greatest, where the inequality is greatest, and where the unemployment is highest. Those countries need to come together, learn from each other, and stand together. If we do that, we will all be swimming. If we don't, the world will sink.
Taking that thought further, Mac, how would you like to be remembered?
I don't think I should be allowed to write my own epitaph, Deepak. I think one of the biggest mistakes that human beings make, and particularly politicians, especially the heads of state, and now it's becoming a practice that they serve 2 terms like in South Africa's constitution. The first term, the president works very hard to his goal, but the second term starts thinking about his or her legacy. The moment you start that, you're going to make a big mistake. So how would I like to be remembered? Simple. I'd like to be remembered the way the people that you've referred to in South Africa today, who come over, shake hands, and we have a practice amongst African people who say, I want to shake hands with you, and now I'm not going to wash my hands until tomorrow because I want to feel your touch. I think that's how we want to be. We want to be remembered as people who have helped to make other people's life better. It is a natural thing to serve yourself, to serve your family, but it is a very special thing to make a difference in the lives of others who have no affinity to you. That's how I'd like to be remembered.